On the 30th of November 2021, the people of Kawambwa town in Zambia woke up to one of the most gruesome murder discovery of a 36-year-old nurse by the name of Bulemu Kafunda. She had been brutally murdered in her sleep, dragged out of her house, burnt beyond recognition and buried in a pit of rubbish. Stories like this would make you lose hope in humanity. When the good of an innocent, hardworking woman is paid with this extent of evil, we are left to wonder, is being good worth it at all? Is it? Maybe it is good to be good, maybe it isn't. But I'm sure if we were to ask the late Bulemu Kafunda right now if it pays to be good, our answer may not be so positive. But before we continue, click the like button, subscribe, and comment what country you're watching this video from. Ms. Bulemu was a nurse at the local hospital there in Kawambwa. She also had an aunt who worked in the same hospital. Bulemu is said to be very principled, well-spoken, soft-spoken, always cheerful, and a kind-hearted person. I mean, you would expect nothing more from a nurse. Her kind heart would be evident after she bought a house in town, very close to a village. Subsequently, she would visit this village, especially at the markets, or to see patients, or just whenever she had a free time. In one of her visits around 2015 and 2016, she stumbled upon a 14-year-old boy by the name of David Chishiba, whom she instantly had compassion for. Upon learning the boy came from a very poor background, also learning that the boy wasn't attending school, she also discovered that the boy did odd jobs for a living to sustain himself and his family. She instantly requested to take custody of this 14-year-old boy. She met his father, whose name is equally David Chishiba, but for the purpose of this story, we would call the father David Chishiba Sr. or Mr. Chishiba, and we would call the little one David Chishiba Jr. So when Ms. Bulemu met the father of this young boy, the man agreed that she should take him in. He was very grateful. I mean, this is one child off his pocket. Now he can worry about the other children that he couldn't even take care of. And that was how Bulemu took Davy to her house, and soon afterwards they began to live with each other. He had his room, she had hers. They lived like mother and son, sort of. I would explain the sort of later on, but she was basically his guardian. She enrolled him in the school, paid his school fees, fed him, clothed him, bought textbooks for him. This boy didn't even need to work. This woman was literally taking good care of him, and all he had to do was go to school, come out with flying colors, and be a good addition to the society. You see, it is unclear what Bulemu's private life was like. It's not really stated. It wasn't mentioned whether or not she was dating or seeing anyone, or if she was married. I'm going to assume she wasn't married and she didn't have any serious relationship in her life. Even though she is a very pretty young lady, it's not so surprising that she might have been single up till her death. She basically wants to strike me like one of those independent women who are fine with how they are. As long as she has a house, she has a good job, she could just adopt a child and pour all her love to that one child. And maybe one day if she finds love, thank God. If she doesn't, she's still fine. It's just unfortunate that she may have picked the wrong child to pour all that love on. Little did she know that the good she was about to do for this little boy was going to come back to bite her on her neck. I guess no good deeds go unpunished. 6 years after Bulemu took David Jr. into her custody, she began to notice some changes in him. Of course, changes are bound to occur, especially when this 14-year-old boy is growing into a full-grown adult. This was clearly not the kid she picked up 6 years ago from the slums. This boy was forming, this boy was growing, this boy was making friends, he was mingling, he was, forming a mind of his own. And like I said, they lived like mother and child, sort of. I guess the thing with the relationship between Bulemu and Davy is just more of a provider. I feel like Bulemu just did providing for this boy. She didn't exactly play the role of parenting. And I think this may have been a problem. I'm not so sure because it's not very stated and it's not very clear. But out of my head, I like to think she just went to work, came home and did everything she could for this boy. I don't think she played the role of a mother. And part of the reason could be that Davy still had access to his own biological parents. It wasn't as if she adopted him or took him away from his family. She just lived at the town next to the village. So Davy had access to his family. From time to time, he would go back to the village to see them and spend some time with them. Eventually, he would come back to the luxurious comfort that Bulemu provided for him. in her house. So I guess for Bulemu, she just wanted to provide financial aid to this boy, give him a roof to stay. I don't think she did any motherly advice duty on him. I don't think she, you know how parents can be. I don't think she did the scolding. I just feel she gave him a lot of freedom and was probably relying that since he still goes home to his parents, the parents would probably still teach him manners, I guess, or give him the regular words of advice on how to behave. I think that must have been the case, because what was about to play next, it's nothing close to a mother and son relationship. And I guess that is why I said they lived like mother and son, sort of. So it was very clear that this little boy was growing up to be a man of his own and growing up to have a mind of his own. Or in this case, he was becoming a time bomb waiting to explode. Part of the changes Bulemu noticed in little Davy was that he was now coming home late at night, very late. He was now taking substances like, drugs or cigarettes. She kind of noticed it. And he was becoming relatively difficult to live with, according to her. So she had complained to her aunt at the hospital, and she had complained to various family members about the kid she was living with. She even complained to neighbors too. So people basically knew that her relationship with this boy she had helped was getting bumpy. The boy was slowly growing out of control. And at this point, he was still in school in his finals, and he was about to take his final exam. So this final exam happened November still of 2021. So at the same time, she had noticed all these changes and they were bothering her. But I guess she was waiting for the perfect timing before she did what she was going to do. And despite all these changes still, Bulemu was still nice to him. Bulemu was tolerant. She was patient. She just felt like, okay, she's saying that this boy is growing out of control, and clearly she's not the mother, so she can't tell him what to do. And so she just knew that she just had to wait a little while for him to finish his exams, and maybe then she would do what she had in mind. However, things took a different turn for the worse when one night Bulemu woke up to somebody on her bed trying to make a pass at her. When she turned on the lights, it was Davy Jr. on her bed trying to have sexual relations with her. It's unclear how the moment was, it's not very clear, but a lot of sources did claim that David tried at different times sneaking into her bedroom to do something with her. And in those times, it was said Bulemu shut him down and, cautioned him to go back to his room. Although some sources said this happened once, some other sources said it happened multiple times. But I like to think it just takes once for her to know that this was too much. That could have just been the point that she knew that Davy had to go. Things needed to change, because this was the height of it. He's wanting to come home late, he's wanting to take substances, he's wanting to be aggressive and rude and out of control. It's another thing if you're going to sneak into your guardian's room and try to sleep with her. And I think this is where Bulemu must have had enough. But she didn't react like the way normal people would, because personally, if I was her, the first time he attempted would be the last time he would have attempted, and he would be going home that night in a stretcher, in an ambulance to the hospital. But clearly this woman, like I said, had a very kind heart, and through the story you could tell how nice and kind and patient she was, because some women wouldn't take this. So what she did after that was that she went to Davy Sr., that is the father of little Davy, Davy Jr. And when she went to meet the father of Davy, she told him that it was time for Davy to come back home. And when the man asked why, she explained that, he's becoming unbearable to live with. It's unclear if she told him all the things that he had done in details, but it was said that the father and Bulemu agreed that Davy was going to come back home immediately after his final exams, which was on the 20th of November last year. So they agreed that he was going to come back home. Although some sources say the father was unhappy, a lot of the sources did consistently say that the father agreed that it was time for his son to come back home. So whether the man was unhappy or not, he agreed that it was time for his son to come back home. It's been 6 years. This woman had tried for him. This woman had paid his fees, fed him without even asking money from the father. So basically, this was the right decision for Bulemu to make. And after having a discussion, she still went back home with Davy because she was peaceful. It wasn't like an instant thing. It wasn't like get your bags and leave my house this moment. She wanted a peaceful transition. She wanted this boy to go home peacefully, and they would still probably be friends, and maybe from time to time he can come visit her, as you know, for old time's sake, and it won't be one of those malicious endings to a 6-year guardian relationship. However, the night before Davy was supposed to return home, the devil in him showed its face in the flesh. So it was said that the night before he was supposed to leave, in the middle of the night, this young man, little Davy, woke up, burst into her room, held her down, and forced himself on her. But he wasn't alone. Like, he didn't do it by himself. He called for help, and help came. Someone helped him kill this woman. And when that person came that night, he was the one who went to open the door. At the time, this woman was sleeping in her bedroom. Davy went to open the door for his accomplice, and the two of them both held her down, raped her, forced her to write a note, and eventually killed her. Who was this person he went to open the door for? Well, it's no other person than his father, Davy Sr. So this is a father and son master plan to get out of poverty by killing the very woman who helped them for 6 years. They took her somewhere into a bush around the compound, burnt her body with tires. The body was burnt beyond recognition. After they had finished burning her body, they buried it in a pit of rubbish, those trash cans where they throw dustbin, and shoved it way down inside and used trash to cover it, just to make sure that no trace of her was ever found. So how did they catch these two monsters, if you may ask? Bulemu was supposed to show up at work on the 26th, but she didn't show up. Her aunt was worried. Her supervisor tried to call her, but her line wasn't going through. So they just hoped maybe she would come back the next day. The next day came, she didn't show up. It's unclear if they went to her house to check up on her, but it was said on the 30th of November, that is after 4 days of her not coming to work, her aunt reported the matter to the police, her family inclusive. So members of her family went to the police to report that their daughter was missing. And instantly the police came to her house to check up on her to see what's up. When they went to her house, they didn't see her, but they saw little Davy there. But it's not unusual to see little Davy there because everybody knows that Davy lives with her. So I'm sure they questioned Davy, but it's not said. And I'm sure if they had questioned him, he too would have claimed that he didn't know where she went. And that is as simple. After all, they lived or they had separate rooms. But when the police checked her room, they saw the note on her bed. Now, when they read the note, I'm not sure if this note was in her handwriting, but since it wasn't stated, I like to think maybe the note was in her handwriting. So reading the note, they were able to deduct that she claimed in the note that she had been raped and that she was ashamed, and that she was going into the farm, into the bush farm, into her farm or forest to end everything. And so the police went to the farm to check for her. I mean, if she was going to take her life in the farm, her body was going to be there, right? I mean, it's not as if she would kill herself and bury herself. So when the police went to the farm, they didn't see her. So they came back to the compound and they searched around. They did a very thorough searching. Because I feel like the aunt already knew. I feel like people already had that idea. I feel like neighbors felt something odd, because these kind of things can't happen without people feeling something. You can't kill an entire human being without someone seeing or knowing something, or without someone suspecting something. And I think the aunt suspected, the family suspected, neighbors and people who knew this not suspected. And when the police came, they knew that they were looking for something, and they kept searching. Some sources claim they searched for hours, and eventually they saw the trash pits, and something told the policeman to check through it. When upon they saw burnt tires, and upon further digging, they saw human remains. Eventually the body was easily identified to be that of Bulemu. And clearly the story was already out. People already knew. I guess the good thing with Nurse Bulemu is the fact that whatever she was going through in her house with Davy, she was communicating that to her families and probably neighbors. So it wasn't as if she was having issues and she was dealing with it personally. She was in communication. She told her aunt She told people, even after she went to meet David's father to talk about David returning home and him not being happy about it. She told people about it. And I guess when the police did some dotting and adding up, they just knew instantly that this boy is not as innocent as he may look. Another thing that probably even gave him away was the fact that in the notes that the police saw, there was an unusual claim on it. It was written on the notes that half of her property, as in 10% of her properties, should be given to Davy Jr. Wait, what? I'm sure Bulemu's answer is like, why would Bulemu want to give you 10% of her properties when she was uncomfortable living with you? When she was in the middle of kicking you out of her house? When she didn't want anything to do with you anymore? When you tried to go into her room to sleep with her? You think we don't know all these things? And I guess that was where it just bumped for him. That was where it became bad for him, because once the police saw that in the notes she claimed to want to give 10% of her properties to this boy, they knew that there was no way she would have written it herself or without duress. And besides, even if she went outside to kill herself, we know damn well that she did not burn herself and bury herself in a pit of trash. Somebody would have had to do that. So who would gain from her death? Who would gain 10% of wealth if this woman died? Who would? Only one person, Davy Jr. And that was how he was arrested. And he did not even take long before confessing. And before you know it, his father was mentioned, and that was how they were just handcuffed and sent to jail. Although it's being stated that there may be other people involved in the killing, but so far it's just father and son that were mentioned in this crime. And so, my dear, this is a sad story of Miss Bulemu Kafunda. A story that discourages one from being so nice out of their own pockets. It's just sad that such a nice woman was paid with this extent of evil. So do let me know what you think. Do you think there was something she did wrong? Do you think there was something Bulemu Kafunda would have done differently to have avoided being killed? Left for me, I would have thought maybe she would have kicked him out. But she was a good woman. She was just a good person. This is a clear evidence that this woman was too good for this earth. This woman was too good for this world. Because if it was up to me, that boy would have left the moment he even comes late to my house. But I still want to know if there was something within her own personality, within her own kindness, within her own person, within her own peaceful person that she would have done differently that would have prevented her from being killed. What could she have done differently? What could she have done or not done to have avoided being killed? Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please click the subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell so whenever there is a new video, you will be the first to know.